boat start to lose speed, you feel the boat start to heel the other way, you immediately start to move the weight, right? And then from the skipper's point of view, right, when you're steering the boat, you say, okay, well, now I'm going to be ready to, all right, so maybe we were slightly overpowered here, right? So maybe when I was steering, I was keeping the windward telltale, slightly pointed up, and we were trying to depower a little bit. But now I'm going to be ready for sailing out of that overpowering puff. I'm going to say, like, okay, well, now I can be ready to head down a little bit maybe and just have both telltales going straight back, go full power mode, right? Not trying to depower the boat at all. I think I think it's super important to, as much as possible, try to look at what the conditions are to where your boat is sailing next, right? And that's 5-10 boat lengths down the road, and try to make an educated guess on what those conditions are going to look like and be ready to make the adjustments in the boat for what those new conditions are going to be. Because most of the time, whether this is, causing a capsize or just in general boat speed, these changes in wind are very visible, right? If you're looking for them, you can see them. Particularly the bigger picture stuff, right? Look, it's not going to be possible, or probably not possible for you to tell, like, okay, as I'm sailing towards, maybe there's another puff over here, or us going to that lull, like, am I going to get headed or lifted by how much, right? Like, oh, that's like a 5 degree head. Like, I'm not talking about detail to that level, but to the point where at least bigger picture what you're going to have to do in the boat to make the boat continue to go at its optimal level, right? Whether that's, so body movement wise, sail wise, steering wise, right? All of that kind of stuff. See it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Part of the problem was, like, I really was not paying attention to, like, the water. Like, I didn't even see that puff. So, like, when everybody was mentioning it after, I was like, oh, like.
I think that was the problem.
Yeah.
Yes, because
like,
I think.
I wouldn't have tacked, like.
No, I agree with you. I think you probably wouldn't have,
Yeah.
right? Because I think if you had looked over your left shoulder, and you saw, like, because at that point, like, it was probably one of the bigger puffs. Because, like, there were, like, actual little white caps on top and stuff like that, and it was like a pretty dark patch of water. I think, yeah, if you had looked over your shoulder and seen that, you would have been like, nah,
Yeah.
we're gonna wait this out. Hi, you mean we're gonna wait this out? Or if you don't have that option, right? If it was in a race and you're like, well, like, we got to tack here anyway, you're gonna know, okay, we're gonna tack here, but the goal here is as we tack, like, we get across the boat as quickly as possible to get hiking as quickly as possible, and we're gonna have to ease the sails a bit. Like, we're gonna do this in a nice controlled way so that we're gonna stay upright. We're gonna go as fast as we can, but we're not gonna, end up with the worst case scenario of capsizing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this is just awareness, right? A lot of this is looking around you. And I think that starts to get easier once you start to, once a lot of, like, the movements, like the actual movements in the boat start to become more innate. Like, you don't think about moving around the boat and stuff as much, or, like, okay, which sheet am I trimming if you're the crew? Like, am I trimming this? What am I doing? I think once you get to the point where you're pretty comfortable with that stuff, your next goal should be getting your head out of the boat more, particularly crew-wise, right? Skippers also, but skippers, it's a little less, you want your head out of the boat a little less, in the sense of you do need to focus on the steering, right? Like you do need to have your eyes on the jib for a lot of the time you're sailing, because if you take your eyes off the jib for any prolonged period of time, you'll find yourself either, if you're going upwind, you'll find yourself, either heading down too much, maybe heading up too much, just not being in an optimal zone. But even as a skipper, you can still look around you, right? It's just you're looking around you for a shorter period. Like maybe you're just taking like a quick glance over your shoulder to look like, particularly, so like the crew should be the one doing a lot of the observation, right? And what the skipper can then do is if the crew kind of notices, that there's, whether it's more pressure, whether it's other boats, like whatever it is, the skipper can just take like a quick look to like do like, to either confirm it, or just kind of, decide exactly, make a final decision about exactly how you're going to react to that. But the skipper shouldn't be like looking, all over the place for any prolonged period of time. And I think if you look around, you'll notice these things before they happen, and you'll be able to react to that. The other thing I just want to touch on, I want to talk about, does that answer?
Yeah, it is.
Yes? Okay. And I think, again, this is the most important. Let your sails out. Yes, so that will let your sails out early enough, and you'll prevent the capsize. All right, the one thing I wanted to touch on was with the going upwind, right? When there's conditions where you're kind of going back and forth between both skipper and crew fully hiked out, and points where the crew maybe has to move into the boat a bit, and you're kind of going back and forth between that based on puffs and lulls coming down, right? And then the puffs are big enough where you both need to be fully hiked, and the lulls are small enough where if you're both still on the rail, you're gonna get too much windward boat heel, and so the crew really does have to start moving in, right? And so the dynamic between that and how to keep the boat moving well through those puffs and lulls. So what I see too much of, and I think part of this is just like a comfort thing, and it just will take time to get comfortable with it, is what I see a little too much of is actual too much main sail adjustment and not enough body weight. So what I mean by that is I think we need to get more comfortable with, particularly skippers, right? Need to be more comfortable with keeping their weight, like keeping their body on the rail, right? And not realizing that the mainsail is your main like power driver of the boat, right? That drives the power in the boat, and really the mainsail controls your heel angle. So what I mean by that is if you're sailing, and you start to sail into a lull, right? So you're sailing in the puff, and you're both, you're hiking, and you have the mainsail, you start to ease the mainsail a bit, right? Which is fine, right? You want to do that, right? If you're hiking, and if hiking is still not enough to keep the boat flat, you're going to start to ease your main a bit, right? The key is though, once the boat starts to get flat, you want to start to trim the main back in. You don't want to just keep it out or start to let it out even more, but you definitely don't want to just keep it out, because then what's going to happen is the boat starts to heel too much to windward. When the boat starts to heel to windward, or the boat starts to flatten out, the reaction needs to be, the first reaction needs to be, can I trim my mane in more? Right? Because if I can trim my mane in more, and that then fixes that heel problem, so like then I get back to maybe feeling a little bit of actual lured heel, right? That's a good thing, because then we can keep our bodies relatively consistent, right, on one side of the boat. We don't have to be moving around, right? Instead of, if we can adjust the boat heel just with the mainsail, just with the sail, that is preferred over having to move in and out of the boat too much. Okay, so this happens. I think this happened on Friday a lot. I think, Jeff, you were even mentioning this when you and Hanan were sailing, right?
Yeah.
And then, right, and how there are times where you'd be fully hiking, but then you'd have to move into the boat because the puff would go away, or it wouldn't be as big anymore. And I think now sometimes the puff is like the wind does die enough to the point where you can trim in the mane all you want, and there's still not going to be enough wind at that point, even with a fully trimmed in mane, to warrant both of you being on the rail, right? And so the crew at least will have to start moving in, right? Like, so it's not to say that just trimming in the mainsail is going to be able to keep you on the rail no matter what. Like, that's obviously not true. The wind can go low enough. It's in conditions where we'll call them just like really puffy conditions, right? So where you get a puff, you get a lull, but then and you can see the next puff coming, right? The next puff is going to come. So like you're sailing in this puff here, sailing to the lull, but then the next puff, you can see it coming down, right? So you say to yourself, okay, well, here, so we're fully hiked out here, I'm easing my mane a little bit, start to sail into the lull here, make sure I trim in my mane all the way, right? See if we're fully powered up here and we can still stay on the, maybe the crew needs to move in a little bit, right? But making sure that I'm fully powered up here, and even if I see this next puff coming, even if it means that we're, so the crew maybe is not all the way in the boat here. Maybe the crew they're not hiking, but they're just sitting on the rail. Maybe I'm getting a slight amount of windward heel, but I can see that there's a gust that's going to come in the next 2 or 3 seconds. So, and I know, okay, in 2 or 3 seconds, we're both going to have to be full hiking again. It's not worth it, and it causes too much instability for the crew to come in a little more and get rid of all that windward heel, and then having to, once the puff hits, move all the way back out to the rail and start hiking again. Instead, stay on the rail, right? Live with 1 or 2 seconds of a little bit of windward heel, like that's okay. Because then once the next puff hits in 2 seconds, 3 seconds, we're both still on the rail, and all we got to do is now just fully hike out, right? So we don't have to move, the crew particularly doesn't have to move their body from like the middle of the boat, then all the way back out to the rail and then hiking. They're already on the rail, and then all you got to do is then just start to move your weight out again from the rail. Meaning you're going to be able to get hiking quicker, and you're going to be able to keep the boat flatter faster, right? Meaning you're going to have to ease less mainsail, right? So like, does this make sense what I'm saying, or am I kind of rambling here a little bit? Tell me if I'm rambling. Because a little bit, okay, a little bit of rambling.
It's been like, what, 40 minutes? 30 minutes?
I talked about this for 40 minutes.
No. It's been like 12 minutes.
No.
Because he started talking about this after coming home.
I've been talking about this for 40 minutes.
The capsizing thing?
We're not talking about capsizing anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we're talking about optimal boat speed. Yeah, we're not talking, no, we're done with capsize. That's over. Okay, well, okay. So I want to try to get this through here, and maybe I should show. Oh, can someone log into the? Is it logged into the computer? No, it's not logged into the computer. I'm gonna put this down because maybe that'll help. There we go. Okay, we're gonna move all this over here. Okay, tell me what doesn't make sense so far about what I'm trying to get across here. Oh, Coral, yes, everything makes sense?
Yeah, the puff thing.
The puff thing. Okay.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. Razor's over here. Basically what I'm trying to get across here is I think there's too much, we're not aware, I think, a lot of times about how much the main sail will help us maintain or help us adjust and maintain our heel angle. So we're gonna go to something we're gonna try to watch. Stanford sailing. Let's see. Whoops.
SBU Sally.
SBU sailing.
Making that video.
Oh yes, we should make our own video of that. I think.
Let's see.
Excellent. Coach,
Yes.
what's the probability of practice happening tomorrow?
What's the probability?
Yeah, the wind in the morning is 2 to 7, and then in the afternoon it's 2 to 9.
Very high.
Hi.
Okay. No, that's no wind.
Oh.
It's nice out.
It's nice though.
This is true. Oh. Friday is like
miserable. Yeah. Excellent. The boat, so that's
Well, it's raining. I'm sure she'll love that.
We've done that before. That was last year.
Stand next to, oh yeah.
Okay.
Stand next to some metal rods while it's like.
So, okay. So these boats are going upwind. So this is a little bit less. How do I turn off this? Yeah. There. Oh, all right. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go with this. All right. So this is a little different than what I was talking about. So in the sense of, this is pretty consistently windy enough where you're not, the crew isn't really even considering coming in. But I think what I want to get across is just the kind of the steering and just the mainsail adjustments here. So if you watch, right? So they're both just hiking, right? Now, we're going to watch this boat here, right? Watch the boom, watch the mainsail. If they get, notice, did you see that? See how the boom went out and then right back in? It's very, very subtle. But it's subtle, you're making these subtle adjustments to try to keep the angle of, look at the angle of heel of the boat. It's pretty consistent, right? It doesn't go any more than, maybe a couple degrees to leeward, right? They're keeping the boat pretty flat. So there, right, you would say here, actually that was a good example, right? So there, kind of here, right? Oh no, what did I do? Oh, what did I do? There's two, oh, that's unfortunate. All right, hold on, let's find that again. here. Okay. Would we agree that this now, they're both hiking, boat actually looks like it's heeling a little to windward, doesn't it? Okay? So, but what they're realizing here is, okay, this isn't a reason to come in the boat, right? This isn't a reason for the crew to come in or for the skipper to come in, right? Because they see, okay, there's enough breeze around, right? We're not sailing into any prolonged lull or anything like that. So the move here to keep the boat powered up and is not to move in, because this windward heel is only going to be momentary, right? It's not going to last a long time, because what they can do is what they're going to try to do is they're going to get probably the next puff of more breeze is going to come in the next second or two. Also, skipper's going to try to trim in the main a little more if they can. Still, it's pretty in, but they maybe have like another half inch or something to trim in. And then also what you've got to think about too, and you can't see their telltales here, right? But the other thing that can cause you to heel to windward or deep power is what? Steering wise, going upwind. Too close to the wind, right? So that's the other thing that you have to balance and you have to look at. So it's like, okay, so if this is happening to me, right? So we're in this boat, right? And we're saying, okay, what's happening here? Why are we? So we're heeling to windward. Why is it happening? What's the checklist that I'm looking at? Okay, so skipper wise, I'm thinking, am I fully trimmed on the main? And am I steering too close to the wind? Meaning, if I look at the jib, is the front of my jib luffing, and is it luffing too much? So if I head down a little bit and I repower the jib up, will that give me a little more speed, and will that kind of get rid of this little bit of windward heel, and will I kind of come back to either neutral, or will I even start to heel a little to leeward? Right, so those are the two things that I'm looking at as a skipper. I'm thinking of mainsail, am I trimmed in all the way, and am I heading up too much? Right? From a crew's point of view, what I'm thinking of is, okay, maybe, so like I'm fully hiked out here, maybe if I look upwind and I say like, okay, the next puff isn't coming for the next maybe 5-10 seconds, okay, so maybe I don't have to be as full out as I am right now. Maybe I can come in a little bit. Not come into the middle of the boat, but just instead of like hiking off my toes, maybe I scooch in, 2 inches or something like that, right? And so I'm just not full out. Right? Those are the things that I'm considering as a crew here. Okay, but now, so they keep sailing. So I think there, right? There. So now, that windward heel went away. What looked like it happened there, actually? What adjustment caused them to repower up there? Do you want me to show it again? I'll show it again. Anyone have a guess? The what? The tip. Yeah, I agree, Carl. I think it's the steering. Right? So I think what's causing the over flattening is, and again, it's keeping the boat flat. So I think it's good. And a little bit of windward heel is not the worst thing, right? Because it's better than. You would rather have a little bit of windward heel than more leeward heel, Okay, Rose, yes, question.
There's also like a boat covering them, and then they were able to get in front of them.
There's also, right, there's also that, so potentially they're just getting better breeze too, because they're getting out of that boat's wind shadow. I agree with that as well. I think, something to remember, a little bit of windward heel is, I'd rather that than have the boat heeling to leeward. The boat's heeling to leeward, the boat is just slipping sideways more, right? The more leeward heel you have, so forget about capsizes and stuff like that. We're talking about just like boat speed and what's happening boat speed wise when you heel the boat to leeward. When the boat's heeled to leeward, the more leeward heel there is, the more, when the boat is going upwind, there's more of a sideways component of movement, right? So if the boat is heeled more, if you're letting the boat heel to leeward more, instead of going straight, you're kind of going like that, right? So you're drifting to leeward, right? You're not tracking as straight as you could. That's why we say all the time, we want to have the boat flat. It's because it's, number one, you're translating more boat speed, but also you're actually going more in the direction you want to go, and there's less of a side slip component. Okay? So, yes, so I think they got out of the wind shadow and they kind of made the adjustment with the steering a bit to kind of repower the boat up. But notice, right? Notice the small adjustments of the main, right? There are adjustments being made. They're just very subtle. Not full height. Not stable. Right, so I think, so what that's talking about is like, so like before that, like now they're flat, right? Before they had a little bit of heel, so like if they could have hiked more, not the worst thing in the world to get the boat a little flatter. Right, so what the skipper's doing there, right, steering wise, right, you can see the jib, starting to bubble a little bit, and the inner telltale starting to go. Like, but once that flattens the boat out, you want to think about steering down a bit to repower the boat up. Right? Again, it's anything to keep the angle of heel relatively consistent. What you don't want to be doing is going like 30 degrees one way, then flat, then back and forth, kind of topsy-turvy between those extremes. Right, so they're hiking. That's right. They get a little over flat there. Right. So now notice, right, the skipper actually moved their upper body in a little bit once they got a little bit over flat. Right. Again, over flat. Right. Skipper kind of moves there. The crew is kind of just staying out. I think that's not a bad way to do it, especially if like more subtle weight adjustments are needed to help keep the boat balanced. Right. So what this is saying here is what we said before is you want to be, before you're doing any of these adjustments, you have to make sure that you're fully hiking, right? Because if you're starting to ease sails or you're starting to head up to depower the boat and you're not fully hiking yet, you're sacrificing extra speed that you could have.
Have you seen this guy?
Whoa! No, I have not seen this guy. I don't know who that is. What is that? I don't know what that is. questions on like how that looks in conditions like that? Okay, so how does that translate to then if it's a little bit puffier, right? Let's see. Yeah. If it's a little puffier, what you're trying to do is just kind of that same thing, but you might have to make more dramatic adjustments with the sail and the weight movement, right? Just because the differences in wind speed between the puffs and the lulls are potentially bigger, right? Than what that was. Like that was, like those are pretty nice conditions there where it's relatively consistent. The puffs are not like that much bigger than there's actually one here. Let's see, where is that other one? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, like, so like here, you can kind of see, right? So like they tack, crew comes all the way out, then kind of once they're both out, crew kind of starts to come in there a little bit, right? Just because they realize they don't have to be fully hiked out, right? These conditions, right? This is not fully hiking conditions. These are just kind of both skipper and crew are just sitting on the rail, right? Maybe hiking in the puffs there a little bit. So like even this crew here, right? Not really hiking here, right? She's kind of just. But again, it's a matter of, right? Notice the skipper keeping the boat, trying to keep the boat as fully powered up as you can, right? So just recognizing what's happening with the mainsail and the steering, I think, is super important. What's interesting with the tacks here, so I want to just mention for a second, right? So, again, just like notice how smooth both the skipper and crew are crossing the boat, but also notice the mainsail, right? So the sail is, as they go into the tack, the sail is trimmed in there, right? So they cross, the mainsail, the skipper switches the hands, starts to ease the main a bit, right? Just to help get the boat flat after the roll, right? So you roll, right? You're gonna want to get the boat flat pretty soon after the roll. So easing the mainsail is gonna help with that, right? And that also is key if it's a little windier too, right? Even if you're not doing a huge roll, you want to, as you're flattening, you're easing the mainsail. That helps flatten the boat. And then once you're like starting to actually hike and you're both on the rail, and you're starting to, get your boat on its new close haul trajectory, then you can trim back in all the way, right? So notice, like, again, the sail's definitely eased here, boat and the jib, right? Then they get flat, now they trim it in all the way. I would argue that, there it goes, now he actually trims it in all the way. Ease and then trim it back in. Right, but again, the key to that is these kind of the smooth crossing of the boat. Also notice, right, with skipper-wise particularly, how far forward they cross, right? Right, they're crossing as far forward as they can, right? And that makes that switch a lot easier. Notice with the jibs, right, coming out of the tack, that wasn't a great one. But right, notice how the jib also doesn't get trimmed in immediately all the way, right? It's that final trim in on both sails doesn't happen until the boat is flat, right? So here, right, they're not in all the way, they're flat, then they trim both sails into their final point. Oh, there we go. That was fun. That was a good one. And again, and you can say to yourself, well, you know, it doesn't look like Maine is actually like going. It's not that much of an ease and trim and all these things, and that's the point. Like it's not, but you got to remember that the amount that we're talking about here, which is maybe again like a foot and a half out, foot and a half in. That's all you got to be doing, right? Like that's enough. Like making even bigger adjustments is not really preferred. Like that's not okay. There we go. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. Some of that. Let's actually just watch jibes for a second. We talk about Tacks all the time. Okay, so these jibes, right? They're going wing on one jibe to wing on the other. So here, right? So we'll watch that one again. So by very definition, right? You're going wing on wing. You're going as downwind as you can go without jibing, right? If you head down anymore, the boat's going to jibe. So what this means is, skipper-wise, driving-wise, you don't need to use a lot of tiller at all. You shouldn't use a lot of tiller. Because you want to be going, you're going this way, you want to essentially be going the same direction when the sails switch sides. What you don't want to happen is, you don't want to end up kind of pointing up like this, and then having to head back down 20 degrees in order to get the jib to be able to wait again. Right? So here, right, skipper's holding the jib sheet, but the crew is about to grab the jib sheet from the skipper, right? So that's step one, right? Because you still want to hold the jib out on the wing, but now the skipper has to, so there, the crew grabbed the jib sheet, right? And they're still flying. The crew now has the jib sheet that's being winged, and then they have this jib sheet just from the block in their other hand, right? They're not doing anything with it at this point. They just have it there, right? And they're holding out the other jib to keep it on the wing. The skipper has let go of the jib sheet, winging it, because the skipper is now going to grab, and they're going to pull over the mainsail. Okay? And notice, right, the skipper doesn't really move the tiller too much. There, right? So what's happened here is the skipper's doing the same thing that you do in a tack in order to straighten the tiller, right? See how the tiller extension is going kind of perpendicular to the boat, right? Because right now what he's done is he's gotten the tiller itself straight, right? So he's not turning anymore. He's not pushing it away from him anymore. He's not heading the boat down anymore. What they're doing is, and they're keeping their body on that side. That little bit of roll is helping the boat turn so that you actually have to really not hardly use any tiller at all, right? Staying on that side. Remember, whichever side your body weight is on, the boat wants to move to the other direction. So keeping your body weight to this side helps the boat turn down, therefore helping it to jibe, right? So then he's doing it where he's just kind of pulling from the block, the sheet. What you can also do, I do it a lot of times, I think it's more comfortable sometimes, is you can just grab the main sheet from where it's coming from the boom, and you can just swing it over that way. Either way is fine. I don't think one of them is wrong or right. I think they're both perfectly to get you to the same place, right? But now, so okay, I would say probably there, honestly, because the boom hits the water. Looks like there's a decent amount of breeze. I think they probably probably stayed on that side a little too long. You probably don't need that much roll, but skipper lands.
Whoa!
And then,
Can you roll less and steer a little?
oh, there you go. Roll less, yes.
I don't think it's come out.
Just like I said. So let's see it. Yes, like that.
Yeah.
Right? So that was a lot less roll, right? But the boat, now, notice what the crew does, like once they land, right? Oh, that one's not a good one. Oh. The other one was better. So, where is this one? Here, right? So, there, right? They land, skipper lands, the crew is now pulling the new jib sheet across so that it goes to the wing, right? So, there, right? And you see, that was actually a pretty,
Better.
that was actually a pretty violent pull across. If you watch the crew with the, see that? It's like a very quick,
Better.
right now. But that's, the timing of that has to be right because you don't want to try to do it too early. Notice the skipper has already landed on the other side before the crew even pulls the jib across. Okay, because if the crew tries to do it before the skipper has landed, the jib is not going to want to go to the wing. See there, right? Skipper's landed, the boat has already kind of come back down to that wing-on-wing angle. Then, once the crew pulls it at that point, the jib will just go right to the wing. Right, so again, it's having the patience to wait to pull that jib across. So that one, so like, how would you guys rate that jibe? What do you think? We'll watch it again. Wait, hold on, open it again. Let's see. How would you guys assess this one? What do you think is good? What do you think they could have done better on that one? What do you think? We'll watch it again. Watch it one more time. What do we think? What was good? What was bad?
Need a little more roll.
I would agree. I think a little more roll, right? So if you look at the skipper here, right? Here. So I think here, see at this point, see how she starts to come across? I think she should still be like sitting on the rail at this point. Just to give it a little more roll. Right? I think she starts to cross just a tad too early. What's good about this one though?
Like steering, they didn't change the direction much.
Yeah, I would agree. I think steering wise was pretty good, right? Steering wise, she didn't really change direction too much, right? And so kind of came out of the jibe, right? Going wing on this jibe. If you look at the trajectory of the boat, right? Look at the bow of the boat, where it's going. Doesn't really change much, and case in point of why it was pretty good directional steering wise was once she crossed and switched sides, she didn't have to do any major steering adjustment to get it so that the jib can then go right back out to the wing. Right, so let's see another one. So yeah, like that was smooth. I think could have waited a little longer before crossing, but it wasn't bad. Does that make sense with the jibes there? How those work? Yes. Okay. Cool. Okay. Okay. I guess before you do it, does anyone have anyone have anything specifically for the last couple minutes here that they want to discuss? Talk about? No? Fine. We'll do this. Oh. Oh, not ice place. Alright, so we'll do this. This is what I want. This is the one. I don't know what this commentator guy is ridiculous. There's no worries. It's awesome. Sounded oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so we'll want to watch this. All right, so this was the first windward mark rounding. So now they're going downwind. Boats are so close, yes. All right, so they're all going, right, so they're around the windward mark, then the offset, now they're going downwind. So we're gonna watch this downwind, but what I want you to think about is watch this downwind and think about what's happening on the downwind and how that would impact your decision on the next upwind and then on the final downwind. So the gates are over there. So number one, what do you notice? What do you notice here?
It's split into two parts.
So kind of a big split, right? And to me, what do you think? What do you think about these boats all going up that way? Because again, the gates are kind of like over here, ish.
Maybe they're selling into some pressure.
So to me, it looks like these boats up here are, to me, I think like they sailed like a bit extra distance. Now, let's see if that actually like gets them anything. And the reason why, right, I'm thinking, you think to yourself like, okay, well, these boats maybe went too far, is you have these lead boats here, and this boat here, like they're more centered, right? And they're clearly making progress toward the gates, right? These boats, and you're gonna see in a second here what's gonna happen. Also just notice, right, how people are trying to keep their air clear here. right? Everybody, you know, for the most part, right, they're trying to make sure that they're spaced apart. You don't have boats directly behind them stealing their wind. I would say though that this group here, you definitely have a little more of that, like slowing each other down type scenario happening, right? Because they're staying more clustered together. Yeah, I would say particularly like this boat here is definitely getting slowed down by this boat and this boat. So here you go, right? So that's a good view. Wait, no, stop. Okay, so that's a good view, right? So you can kind of see what happened here, right? With these boats definitely went too far towards this side, because look at now how much extra distance they're going to have to sail down to get to the gates versus these boats here that stayed a little more to the right or a little more centered. Does that make sense? Right? And then so I think what you're going to see coming into the gates is that actually it's fun. You can kind of watch these boats here, kind of like jockeying for the position here. Right, so you have the first boat that rounded. So now what I want you to watch actually is the rounding on this gate once all of these boats come in, because you can notice like, okay, there's a lot of boats that are going to come into that gate at one time. Right? Notice how though, well, watch exiting and see what, I want you to see what you notice. So the one to the right. Again, you have a lot of boats going there. Oops. Okay. That's not what we want.
It's a secret.
It's a secret. No. It goes in a second, I think. It does, because I was watching this before. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay. What do you notice about all those boats that rounded that gate? What do you notice about that? Anybody? Anything?
Each one is like higher than the next.
Each one is,
Like as they go around, the boats in the end of the line get a better angle than the boats in the front.
yes, right, correct. So what I want, find it again.
Yep.
Here, oh, fine. Yeah. So notice they get no one. The boats that are behind, nobody ends up below the boat in front of them. Bless you. Okay, now we're gonna get this wonderful view of Fort Adams and Newport. It's a beautiful place.
They're in Newport?
Yeah, it's a Newport.
I
Yeah.
love Newport.
Me too.
Yeah. Rhode Island, right?
Right?
Yeah.
So notice, right? Nobody ends up below the boat in front of them. So what they did was they all slowed down enough to where they at least end up behind the boat in front of them, right? They don't get, the term is pinwheel. Nobody got pinwheeled, right? And now they some boats start to tack away. I think what's interesting here, what do you think is interesting about these boats here?
Why
That
did
boat.
they tie?
Yeah, why? Yeah, that boat 17 finally tacked. I don't know why they didn't tack earlier. Seems a little weird to me. Okay, and then
It's so much far away.
what?
Those two boats are so far away from that group that we just saw.
These boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are the two lead boats, right? right? And you can see those tacks, the same thing we were talking about, right? You can see the main, right? Eased out, they flatten the boat, they trim the sails all the way back in then. And then they get pop. And then this one. Oh, this is actually good here. Right? This is a good upper. So you can see the adjustments, right? This is actually a pretty good like intermediate conditions here where they're not fully hiking, but right, you can see the adjustments, the small adjustments on the sail. Let's go back. Do that for a while actually. Right. So the crew is hiking here. Right, so there's enough wind to keep the crew hiking. Skipper is kind of just sitting a little in. Pumping, yeah, a little bit of pumping there. Right, but you can see there's adjustments of the boom. The boom is not staying. Right, so when they, right, there are small adjustments that the skipper is making. Right, and those adjustments are powering up the boat and then depowering slightly. Again, trying to keep that angle of heel fairly consistent. Right, so when they're trimming back in, that's like when the skipper's trimming back in, probably they're getting a little more breeze. Right, they feel there's a little more breeze, so they're trying to get as much speed out of the boat as possible. Right, so now they're coming back up to the north. Now, right, you can see there's actually some waves coming up there. So I don't know where those waves are.
It's one wave.
It's like literally like a stand. I don't understand that.
Maybe from the boat.
I guess so. Right, so then they tack. Now, I think this is interesting here. What do you think about, so watch after the offset, what do you think about boat 5's decision here?
I would say right, because last time right played nicely, but they jive.
Yes, so they jibed. So number one, you think about, okay, so the last time on the downwind, the boats that stayed, right, the boats that did not jibe away and go more left, boats that stayed over here, they ended up ahead, right? The other thing that's happening, this decision for boat 5 to jibe, what is happening right now to boat 5?
They're going into a pack.
They're going into a pack of boats, right? What is boat 10 doing?
Clear air.
Clear air and doing what? Where are they going?
Wing on wing.
They're going towards the mark. They're going straight where they gotta go. Where is boat 5 going? And watch what happens even worse.
Oh, what?
Right? So that right there, my opinion, loses them the first place.
It looks like they're ahead now.
They don't end up ahead. They don't. Also, again, I think what ends up happening here is, I think it's because, so that definitely loses them distance, that decision to jibe and then have to like get out of the way of those boats still coming upwind. Also, just based on that first downwind, I think this side is definitely more favored over this side. Bless you.
I guess they wanted to protect, because if they wouldn't go, I mean, they could have reached to the right side more. Yeah, probably that would be.
Right, because I think that would have been a better decision. I think would have kept them out of other boat traffic, and it still would have protected. They would have been able to still protect against boat 10.
It might be like the pixels, but it kind of looks like there's more wind on the left side.
Yeah, because a lot of boats they jive here, you see? boats were.
A lot of boats jibe, yeah. I still think, I still think they're, like at this point, like I don't really know why this boat would still be like going this way.
They reached them. Still.
Yeah, like, I think they're just, I think for whatever reason, there's a lot of these boats just kind of sailing.
Did they start as a race? What is
Where's
going
the
on?
line?
Yeah, that's B division.
Oh, nice.
So,
At
yeah.
the same time, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's,
That's so confusing.
So easy to sail through.
it's, oh, and then there's no.
That boat is so close. What is going on?
There's a lot of stuff going on over here.
That was crazy close.
But you can see like what's happening here too. It's like I think for a lot of these boats are sailing probably farther than they need to because they're trying to like kind of keep their wind clear from the boats behind them, right? So like even these boats, like they're kind of fighting with each other. Like, do they need to be going up that far? Definitely not, right? I mean, these guys are heading toward the line. These guys are, I think that's just something to be aware of is kind of getting stuck in like a parade where you're all just kind of pushing each other up and up to try to keep clear. Just always keep one eye on have an eye on where is the mark? Like where do we want to go? Yes, clear air is important, but if it's taking you away from where you want to go, maybe then jibe or just try to get clear air going back towards the direction you actually need to finish towards, or whether it's the gates or what have you.
But in such a bigger pack, would you say that it's a good conservative move to stay with all other boats and being in 5th, 6th place, but just because if you
if you're in 5th or 6th, then you're gonna stay in 5th or 6th by staying with the pet. Yes, absolutely. Then it does not make sense to make a big, particularly if here it looks like it's pretty streaky conditions, right? So it doesn't make sense to take a big risk if you're in a solid position and that position is going to and by staying with the group you're going to be able to kind of stay in that position ish. But yes. Yes. So they have hours and hours and hours of this stuff on YouTube. So you can watch this. Oh look at this. See now these are the boats that were coming back in from that extreme left side. And I think, tough to tell if that really worked or anything. But I think they definitely lost the distance to boats that sailed a more direct route. I think, why did all these boats jibe? So, just in the sense of why did they jibe around the windward mark, that could be a wind shift. I don't know what this guy is. Actually, no, if you listen to this guy's commentary, this guy doesn't know what's happening 90% of the time. He doesn't even know what boat he's, it's actually quite funny. But I think it's why they didn't ask this guy to continue doing college nationals. Because he was it's actually kind of funny, sometimes he's just and this is B division in the 420s, and he's like, no. This is this co-person's no, that's not what this is. He's like, whoops, that's brown bears in the boat too. It's nope, that's Jacksonville, whatever.
Yeah, they called the Yale boat the Boston version.
The boat, yeah, it's
They have a giant Y on their chest. I don't think they're.
correct, right, correct. But yeah, so there's a lot of this, and I think this is cool this is good to watch because I think you kind of start to, it's pretty good like drone footage of these races. And I think you can, you know, actually start to recognize certain things, right? You can, you know, recognize, just in actual race scenarios, like, you know, what the favorite side was, what, positioning of boats versus other boats and what that kind of translates to. Because I think it's hard to, sometimes even when you're sailing, it's kind of hard to sometimes see those things. And I think this example is where you can actually watch like the drone footage, gives you a really good vantage point. But yeah, cool. I guess we're at 9:15. Wow. What?
No.
Oh. Oh no, that's okay. Let me turn the lights back on. Maybe. Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, that's the last Chalk Talk of the semester. So thank you guys all for coming this semester. I appreciate it. I hope it was helpful.
Very helpful.
And we will continue doing Chalk Talks next semester.
Yes.
I think they are good. So
That's a nice magnet.
these are nice magnets.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a wonderful gift. They're beautiful. Yes. Question. Yes.
When